By far, a material latent defect has the greatest potential to either cost you a ton of money or hardship as a buyer, or the largest potential to find yourself in a lawsuit as a seller in a real estate transaction here in my market of Surrey and the Fraser Valley. And this channel is about real estate education, so you can hopefully navigate your way through the wild but yet rewarding world of home ownership and real estate investing. So in today's video, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and cover the topic of material latent defects from top to bottom. And I promise I won't hide anything, and I will fully disclose to you all that you need to know. That was actually a material latent defect joke.
Wow, what great real estate humor.
And if you learned anything here today, please go ahead and click the like button to help get this video out to as many buyers, sellers, and homeowners as now my Polly B video has. Yep, almost 25,000 views. And after clicking the like button, if you think to yourself, wow, this chubby 40-something-year-old dad almost sounds like he knows what he's talking about, then please subscribe to the channel so you can come back and learn even more about real estate next week. And now onto the video all about the wildly misunderstood, misrepresented, and sometimes swept under the rug material latent defect. The BCFSA defines a material latent defect, or an MLD, as a defect that cannot be discerned through reasonable inspection of the property, including a defect that renders the real estate dangerous or potentially dangerous to the occupants, unfit for habitation, or unfit for the purpose of which the buyer is acquiring it, if the buyer has made this purpose known to the seller. But a material latent defect may also include a defect that would involve great expense to remedy, a circumstance that affects real estate in respect of which local government or other local authorities has been given notice to the seller indicating that the circumstances must or should be remedied, or a lack of appropriate municipal building and other permits in respect to the real estate. So in real people terms, anything that is not easily discoverable that could cause real or financial problems to the new owner. But we must separate the material defect that sounds a lot like an MLD, except it's missing the latent part, meaning existing but not yet developed or could even be hidden, which is basically then a patent defect that is easily discoverable with a reasonable inspection. Or a latent defect, which is, of course, hidden and a defect, but not material, meaning it doesn't really affect the use or enjoyment or safety of the property, nor would the remedy be very costly. But a material latent defect must be those three things: material, latent, and a defect. The most common types of material latent defects are high levels of radon.
Not sure how common that is.
A leaky basement, but only really when it rains. Structural damage, failure of the building's envelope, underground storage tanks, problems with the drinking water, and unremedied damages caused by illegal use of the property, e.g., marijuana grow operations. Or probably most commonly, new installations or renovations of electrical or gas systems completed without the appropriate permits and inspections. Well, they may also be considered examples of material latent defects. And we'll come back to that in just a moment. Because if you are a seller, you must know that it is your duty to disclose an MLD. You cannot cover things up, and no, you are not permitted to just kind of forget about the problem that may have been covered up. You know, like that time you skim coated the sinking floor in your basement and then laid that nice new vinyl plank flooring on top. In fact, not only do you have to disclose any material latent defect to a potential buyer, but you also must do so not only in writing, but in writing before that buyer writes an offer at all. Here in BC, you can actually make this disclosure in a couple of different ways. Many sellers will be instructed by their agents to fill out a material latent defect form provided by their brokerage, or often the BC REA. Or it is acceptable to also make this disclosure on something called the PDS, or the Property Disclosure Statement. But remember, if you check yes on the material latent defect section of that form, again, this must be provided to the buyer before they write an offer, not after they write the offer, when most PDSs are then given to the buyer. But the PDS that I covered in this video way back on the channel can be confusing because yes, it asks, does the property contain a material latent defect? But it also asks other questions like, are you aware of work done without the required permit? Or does the property contain unauthorized accommodations? Most sellers, and to be fair, probably Also, most agents don't realize that if you say yes to either of those questions, that you also have to say yes to the question, does the property contain any material latent defects? And this then is getting back to my earlier comment about renovations and permits. In my market of Surrey and the Fraser Valley, most detached homes now have rentals in the basement that we refer to as a rental suite or a basement apartment. If that work is done without permits and for sure without final occupancy from the city, well, you have an MLD. And that defect must now be disclosed again in writing before the offer. And to be 100% transparent, and I guess I had better be in this video about full disclosure, illegal suites have been so normalized in the market that I work that, well, they don't often get disclosed as they should be. And that could go right along with the, I don't know, extra long sun deck that you added on in the summer of 2020, or the oversized detached shop that you built knowing for sure that it's just a little bit bigger than the city would allow. Or yes, anything else at all that might cause the future buyer or homeowner not to be able to occupy the property safely, or that may cause them large financial loss in the future. Like if that basement suite or suite man cave in the backyard needs to be removed as per the city. Another huge one is that pesky oil storage tank buried in the backyard. Because it was common way back in the 50s and 60s that you would heat your home with an oil burning furnace, and that furnace's fuel came from a buried tank in the backyard. Many sellers today think that if they don't know for sure if that tank is there, that they are just then off the hook if they forget to mention it or the possibility of it in the contract. But a material latent defect in most cases when they go to court, well, it's often found that the seller may not have known, but they ought to have known, or it was their responsibility to have known about the defect, like an underground oil storage tank. So no, you cannot disclose your way out of liability for something as massive as an underground oil storage tank, because those under BC law have to be removed. But you can, in many cases, sell a property with a material latent defect, and maybe not just in many, but I'd say probably in most cases. So let's go back again and look at that illegal rental suite for a moment. This, unlike a buried oil storage tank, you can notify the buyer in writing before they write the offer, and if they're okay with it, to proceed, knowing full well that the suite could be discontinued by the city in the future, or they may have to pay tens of thousands of dollars to get the rental legalized, well, then they absolutely are allowed to proceed with that purchase and take on those risks. So you have to be very careful when dealing with a material latent defect, and for sure, no matter what you do, don't just conveniently forget to mention it. And if all this seems like a whole lot to navigate and you're worried about it when buying a home, or if you're worried about selling your home that has a material latent defect and you need help, well, you can book a call with me right now using the link in the description below at a time that works best for you. Thank you for subscribing, clicking the like button if you learned anything at all, and we'll see you in a couple of days.